Hello. As you can tell, my hair is getting a bit ridiculous now, but that's good. We're looking at Act 2, Scene 4 today, and this is a kind of a scene of two halves, really. We have a lot of character development in this. We learn a lot about Mercutio, Benvolio, and Romeo, and then the second half, it kind of goes back to the story at hand. So it's a scene of two halves, and kind of Shakespeare's kind of keeping the ball rolling on several different elements on this one. Now, as per, I've rounded up some of the fools and got them to act this one out. So the first part of the scene might look like this.
Where the devil should this Romeo be? Came he not home tonight?
Not to his father's. I spoke with this man.
Why, that same pale, hard-hearted wench, that Rosalind, torments him so that he will sure run mad.
Tybalt, the kinsman to old Capulet, hath sent a letter to his father's house.
A challenge on my life.
Romeo will answer it.
Any man that can write may answer a letter.
Nay, he will answer the letter's master, how he dares being dared.
Alas, poor Romeo. He is already dead, stabbed with a white wench's black eye, run through the ear with a love song, the very pin of his heart cleft with the blind bow boy's butt shafts. And is he a man to encounter Tybalt?
Why, what is Tybalt?
More than a prince of cats. Oh, he is the courageous captain of compliments. He fights as you sing prick song, keeps time, distance, and proportion. Rest me his minim breasts, 1, 2, and the third in your bosom. The very butcher of a silk button, a duellist, a gentleman of the very first house, of the first and second cause. Ah, the immortal passado, the punto reverso, the hay.
The what?
The pox of such antic lisping, affecting fantissimes. These new tuners of accents, by Jesu, a very good blade, a very tall man, a very good whore. Why is not this a lamentable thing, grandsire? That we should be thus afflicted with these strange flies, these fashion mongers, these pardon me's, who stand so much on the new form that they cannot sit at ease on the old bench. Oh, their bones, their bones!
Here comes Romeo.
Here comes Romeo. Oh, without his roe, like a dried herring. Oh, flesh, how art thou fishified? Now is he for the numbers that Petrarch flowed in. Laura to his lady was a kitchen wench. Marry, she had a better love to be rhyme her. Dido and Dowdy, Cleopatra gypsy, Helen and Hero, Hildings and harlots. Thisbe a grey eye or so, but not to the purpose, Signor Romeo. Bonjour, there's a French salutation to your French slop. You gave us the counterfeit fairly last night.
Good morrow to you both. What counterfeit did I give you?
The slip, sir, the slip. Can you not conceive?
Pardon, good Mercutio. My business was great, and in such a case as mine, a man may strain courtesy.
That's as much as to say, such a case as yours constrains a man to bow in the hands.
Meaning to curtsy.
Thou hast most kindly hit it.
A most courteous exposition.
Nay, I am the very pink of courtesy.
Pink for flower.
Right?
Why then is my pump well flowered?
Sure wit, follow me this jest now, till thou hast worn out thy pomp, that when the single soul of it is worn, the jest may remain after the wearing solely singular.
Oh, singly souled jest, solely singular for the singleness.
Come between us, good Benvolio, my wits faint.
Switch and spur, or a crier match.
Nay, if our wits run the wild goose chase, I am done, for thou hast more of the wild goose in one of thy wits than I am sure I have in my whole 5. Was I with you there for the goose?
Thou wast never with me for anything, when thou wast not here for the goose.
I will bite thee by the ear for that jest.
Nay, good goose, bite not.
Thy wit is a very bitter sweeting. It is a most sharp sauce.
And is it not well served into a sweet goose?
Oh, here's a wit of Cheverel that stretches from an inch narrow to an ell broad.
I stretch it out for what word broad, which, added to the goose, proves thee far and wide a broad goose.
Why is not this better now than groaning for love? Now art thou sociable, now art thou Romeo, now art thou what thou art, by art as well as by nature, for this drivelling love is like a great natural that runs lolling up and down to hide his bauble in a hole.
Stop there.
Thou desirest me to stop in my tail against the hair.
Thou wouldst else have made thy tail large.
Oh, thou art deceived. I would have made it short, for I was come to the whole depth of my tail, and meant indeed to occupy the argument no longer.
A lot to unpack there. So this scene starts with them looking for where he is, and it's an important point that we learn that Tybalt has sent a letter to Lord Montague's house, so Romeo's father's house. He has not forgotten that Romeo went to the party, and he's not forgotten that he feels betrayed by that. Yeah? If you remember from that scene, he makes it clear that he does not want to let this go. That at some point, this is going to come back to bite Romeo. And we're starting to see how that might look. Mercutio bets on his life that it's a challenge. It's a challenge, I bet on my life that it's a challenge, a duel. Yeah? Now remember, A3 context, honor was a huge part of society at this point. And to turn down that kind of challenge would be really kind of embarrassing and dishonorable for your family and for yourself. Now, as we move down, Mercutio and kind of Benvolio joke about Romeo. Mercutio says that, poor Romeo is already dead because he's been stabbed with a white wench's black eye. This is kind of talking about how impulsive Romeo is. Yeah, Mercutio again is kind of mentioning that you were in love a minute ago and now you've got some already new person. It's as if you're not even alive. You're already dead. Now, obviously, Mercutio is just being flamboyant there and kind of hyperbolic, but we know, dramatic irony, that's a bit of foreshadowing there, that Romeo, by falling in love with Juliet, has kind of sealed his fate, which is a returning theme for us. Now, then we get into what is Tybalt, and we've talked about kind of the symbol of aggression, the symbol of anger and kind of ferocity and power as well, to be fair. And Mercutio recognises that look. And in this whole little bit, he's going into a whole section of dueling jargon almost. It's the semantic field of kind of dueling and fighting. So he talks about, he fights you as a sing prick song, the passago, the punto reverso, and all that kind of stuff. Whenever I've seen Romeo and Juliet live, this has always been a part where he has a sword out, or he's pretending he's got a sword out, and he's kind of, hey, wait, yeah, kind of pretending to be kind of dancing around the stage, fighting an invisible thing. So again, we're seeing a very flamboyant character in Mercutio, but he calls him the courageous captain of compliments. Now, he says, look, he fights you as he sing prick song, keeps time, distance, and proportion. We're learning here that Tybalt is an extremely good warrior. He's a brilliant fighter, and he's not someone to be kind of pushed aside and dismissed for that reason. Yeah, he is someone that knows what he's doing. So again, we as the audience are going, okay, well, he sent something to Romeo's house to challenge his life, and now we're learning he's pretty good at fighting. It's not sounding good for Romeo. He goes on a bit of a rant here about not liking people who are not just kind of passionate, innate fighters. He doesn't like the idea of ceremony and kind of bowing and, oh, pardon me, shall we fight, and all this kind of stuff. He doesn't like that, and he finds it irritating. But before he can go on, in comes our old pal Romeo. Now, be prepared, because we're going to get a lot of sexual innuendo, sexual euphemism, loads of different stuff in this one between Romeo and Mercutio. So, Benvolio, here comes Romeo, and Mercutio straight in there without his roe, like a dried herring. Now, a roe is the part of a fish, kind of the reproductive part of a fish, so where the eggs are kept, all that kind of stuff. So Romeo comes in, and straight away we've got a play on words. Romeo comes in without his roe, as in, oh, here comes that person we know, as if he hasn't got any genitals, as if he is a Ken doll. He is smooth down there. But that's what he's saying. He's saying, you are no longer a man. You've become almost kind of you've lost your masculinity. Then we kind of see quite a symbolic little part here, I think. Oh, flesh, how art thou fishified? Yeah. So you are, the fleshy kind of manly aspects of you have become fishified and have lost their potency, and you've become kind of, weak and pale and all these kind of things because of whatever you've done. You've fallen in love. So Mercutio is, clearly insulting him there, but thou art fishified. Now we get a whole list now of people that Mercutio is kind of joking are not as good as the person that Romeo loves. Remember, they don't know who it is yet. Laura to his lady was a kitchen wench. Dido a dowdy, Cleopatra a gypsy, Helen and Hero, Hildings and harlots. Yeah, so he lists off loads of people who are kind of traditionally seen as beautiful. If this was a modern play, Marilyn Monroe would probably Marilyn Monroe will probably be mentioned here. Yeah, but Cleopatra was seen as this beautiful queen, and she's a gypsy in comparison. He then continues it, Signor Romeo, bonjour, there's some French salutation for your French slop. So he's saying, you're acting like the French, you're kind of lovey-dovey. That's not manly, that's not power. You need to sort yourself out, basically. Now, as we go down, we start to see a bit of a match between Mercutio and Romeo forming, a match of wits, basically. And we do actually see that Romeo can hold his own. Mercutio is a witty man, but Romeo can he can give as good as he gets. That's as much to say as a case as yours constrains a man to bow in the hams. The hams meaning the buttocks. So Mercutio is basically kind of, again, talking for the audience here that we all see that he's very lustful, Romeo. And Romeo, as we've heard, doesn't like to hear this. So Mercutio's not kind of holding his punches. He's not taking any prisoners. He's going for it. But yeah, he says, yeah, your business that you've been away to has been a sexual business. It's not really kind of the business that we would know as business. Now later on, Mercutio says, I am the very pink of courtesy. And Romeo replies, yeah, pink for flower. Now flower, as you may know, is often used as a kind of a euphemism for vagina. So he is calling him a vagina, basically. And Mercutio kind of lets him have that one. Right, okay. All right, I'll let you have that one. And Romeo continues, well, then is my pump well flowered. Okay, so this one, I keep making like it. Basically the idea that Romeo is saying, well, if we're bringing that up, then my pump is well flowered. Mercutio responds by saying, yeah, you've worn out your pump. As in, you've been so busy, mate, that, that's going to wear out pretty soon. It's, the single soul of it is worn. And you've used it up. You've been so out there doing the business. Now, we get a whole little bit here about a goose, and it goes in a whole thing about it. I'm not really going to explain this bit because it's not like key. But basically the idea is that they kind of both riff off this idea of a goose to prove how witty they are. Because Mercutio up here says that, come between us, good Benvolio, my wits faint. As in, no, he's so witty, he's too witty for me. And they kind of have this little bit of a match off about a goose. Feel free to look at it on your own, but it's not kind of key to what we need to look at. Now then we get more euphemism. Here's the wet of a cheverel that stretches from an inch narrow to an L broad. As in, Romeo, you are a man who is... Yeah. And Romeo responds by saying, I stretch it out for that word broad. Again, he's saying, don't you worry, I'm alright in that department. Now, after this whole thing, Mercutio's happy. He loves this. This is what he wants back. Look. Why? Is this not better now than groaning for love? Now art thou sociable. Now art thou Romeo. Now art thou what thou art. As in, now you're back to who you were. So we're seeing this was the Romeo before he fell in love with Rosaline and with Juliet. And Mercutio's glad to have him back. Now art thou sociable. Now art thou Romeo. You are back to who you are. You are back to your kind of your baser instincts. Now this bit ends before the nurse comes in with more of the innuendo, and it gets pretty graphic. He says, for this drivelling love is like a great natural that runs lolling up and down to hide his bauble in a hole. So you just want to go and have sex, basically. Borbling a whole euphemism for that. Benvolio's like, whoa, all right, let's calm down there. And then Benvolio mistakenly joins in a little bit, kind of trying to calm down the situation by joking that you would have made thy tail large. Tail, euphemism for penis. And aka you would have kept up this thing until you gave yourself an erection. Mercutio then replies that you are deceived. I would have made it short, as in I wouldn't have made it erect because I was come to the whole depth of my tail. As in, don't worry, I'm finished, almost. Yeah, when I told you this was a filthy scene, I didn't lie there. All right, so then the nurse comes in, and I think I play a very good nurse, frankly, because I'm short and I can be hysterical. Good. And it might look a little bit like this.
Here's goodly gear. A sail, a sail!
Two, a shirt and a smock.
Peter,
And on?
my fan, Peter.
Oh, good Peter, to hide her face, for her fan's the fairer face.
Good ye, good morrow, gentlemen.
Good ye, good den, fair gentlewoman.
Is it good den?
'Tis no less, I tell you, for the bawdy hand of the dial is now upon the prick of noon.
Out upon you! What a man are you! One gentleman that God hath made for himself to mar. By my troth, it is well said for himself to mar, quoth they, gentlemen. Can any of you tell me where I may find the young Romeo? I can tell you, the young Romeo will be older when you have found him than he was when you sought him. I'm the youngest of that name, the faults are the worse. You say well.
Yeah, is the worst well? Very well took you, faith. Wisely.
If you be he, sir, I desire some confidence with you.
She will indict him to some supper.
Aboard! So ho!
What hast thou found?
No hair, sir, unless a hair, sir, and a Lenten pie. That is something stale. And a whore here be spent. An old hair whore, is very good meat in Lent. But a hair that is whore is too much for a score. When it pours, it be spent. Romeo, will you come to your father's? Will to dinner thither?
I will follow you.
Farewell, ancient lady. Farewell.
I pray you, sir, what saucy merchant was this that was so full of his ropery? A gentleman, nurse, that loves to hear himself talk, and will speak more in a minute than he will stand to in a month. And a speak to nothing against me, I'll take him down. And a were the lustier than he is, and 20 such jacks, and if I cannot, I'll find those that shall. Scurvy knave. I am none of his flirt gills, I am none of his skeins mates. And thou must stand by too, and suffer every knave to use me at his pleasure.
I saw no man use it at his pleasure. If I had, my weapon should quickly have been out. I warrant you, I dare draw as soon as another man, if I see occasion in a good quarrel, and the law on my side.
Now, and for God, I am so vexed that every part of me quivers. Scurvy knave. Pray you, sir, a word, and as I told you, my young lady bade me inquire you out. What she bade me say, I will keep to myself. But first, let me tell ye, if ye should leave her in a fool's paradise, as they say, it were a very gross kind of behaviour, as they say, for the gentlewoman is young, and therefore, if you should deal double with her, truly, it were an ill thing to be offered to any gentleman, and very weak dealing.
Nurse, commend me to thy lady and mistress. I protest unto thee.
Good heart, and in faith I will tell her as much. Lord, she will be a joyful woman.
What wilt thou tell her, nurse? Thou dost not mock me?
I will tell her, sir, that you do protest, which is I take it as a gentlemanlike offer.
Bid her devise some means to come to shrift this afternoon, and there she shall at Friar Lawrence's cell be shrived and married. Here is for thy pains.
No, truly, sir, not a penny.
Go to, I say you shall.
This afternoon, sir? Well, she shall be there.
And stay, good nurse, behind the abbey wall. Within this hour my man shall be with thee, and bring thee cords made like a tackled stair, which to the high top gallant of my joy must be my convoy in the secret night.
Farewell, be trusty, and I'll quit thy pains. Farewell, commend me to thy mistress. Now God in heaven bless thee. Hark you, sir. What sayest thou, my dear nurse? Is your man secret? Did you ne'er hear say, two may keep counsel, putting one away? I warrant thee, my man's as true as steel. Well, sir, my mistress is the sweetest lady. Lord, Lord, when it was a little prating thing, oh, there is a nobleman in town, one Paris, that would fain lay knife abroad. But she, good soul, had as lief see a toad, a very toad as I see him. I anger her sometimes, and tell her that Paris is the properer man. But I'll warrant you when I say so. She looks as pale as any cloud on a versal world.
Aye, nurse. What of that? Both with an R?
Ah, Mocker, that's the dog name. R is for the... No, I know begins with some of the letter. And she hath the prettiest sensuous of it. Of you and Rosemary, that it would do you good to hear it.
Commend me to thy lady.
Aye, 1,000 times. Peter,
Anon.
before and apace.
I feel like Mr. Rose's Peter is very, very funny. Just because I'm so short and he's so tall. Now, the nurse comes in and they all start mocking her. Romeo says, a good gear, a sail, a sail. So that's kind of throwing back to, ships on the sea. If they see something on the horizon, they go, a sail, a sail. As in they've seen something on the horizon. As if this nurse is as big as a ship, basically. They're not being very nice to her. And Romeo is never nice to her until he learns who she is. And we see his character development and flips there. Now, she asks for her fan because it's hot. And Mercutio says to hide her face, for her fan's the fairer face. AKA, you're so ugly. Yes, you should be hiding your face. Okay, really pushing the buttons here. Now this all continues, and we see this kind of back and forth between mainly Mercutio and the nurse, to be fair, but Romeo does join in, and the nurse is kind of disgusted at how he's acting. And it's important that we know that she's disgusted because obviously Romeo wants to impress her so that he can be with Juliet. Because he knows that kind of she's the barrier at the moment, metaphorically. Romeo's joining in, but he's not really he's not being a po about it. So she asks, where can I find young Romeo? And he says, I can tell you, but it'll be older than when you found him, than when you sought him, sorry. So that's obviously true, because if I say, where can I find an apple? You'll be like, oh, the apple's there, but it's older than when you first asked for it. Well, obviously, because time passes. So they're just being annoying, really. I completely can't relate to that. She says she desires some confidence with him, so she desires a word, she desires some kind of chat with him. Now at this, Benvolio and Mercutio do kind of make their way out, but Mercutio decides to sing a very rude song to her. Remember, being respectful to elders in this time was hugely, hugely important, and he's not really doing that. An old hair whore. He's obviously playing on the wordplay there of whore. He's being pretty rude. He's being, reactive. He's being very fiery, which is exactly what Mercutio's character is like. And he says, I will follow you. And, Mercutio gets that last little joke in, ancient lady, or, you're so old, you're ancient. Then they go out, and Romeo kind of sums up what he thinks of Mercutio, which is an interesting point, I think. He says, a gentleman nurse that loves him to hear himself talk and will speak more in a minute than he will stand to in a month. Now, he's kind of saying there that Mercutio is all chat. He's all talk and no action. Now, that's an interesting point to think about later on, once we kind of see what happens later on in the play. But it's interesting that Romeo has that opinion of him, and kind of that idea that, oh, he's all talk and he doesn't actually do anything. He's harmless. Mercutio is harmless. He could never kind of be so aggressive to actually try and cause harm to someone. Now, the nurse kind of sums up that she's not very happy with it. She says, I am none of his flirt girls. I am none of his skeins mates. So flirt girls as in, I'm not one of his kind of whores or sluts that he kind of, that he associates himself with. I'm a respectable woman, etc. Bit of comic relief here. where she has a go at Peter, because obviously Peter is meant to be her protector, he's meant to be her kind of assistant and kind of watch out for her. And she says, and you've got to stand by too and suffer every knave to use me as his pleasure. Now Peter, again, if you remember, is not the brightest spark. And he says, I saw no man use you at his pleasure. If I had, my weapon would have quickly been out. And he's like, I will take them on. Where are they? You know, it's like, it's a bit of comedic relief after that kind of scene. Here we have the nurse kind of being very angry, but then she finally does start to talk to Romeo about what she wants to talk about. She warns him, but let me tell you, if you should lead her in a fool's paradise, as they say, it were a very gross kind of behaviour, as they say. So, you better not be leading her on. Don't lead into a fool's paradise. Now, there's some kind of contextual points here, but also, I think it's just important to reference that. I'll do the context first. Kind of the idea that, you know, young love was seen as foolish, and, you know, you couldn't possibly be in love because you're too young. You don't know what that is. You don't understand it. It's, you know, it's a fool's paradise. But actually, I think we could argue against that kind of assumption from the nurse, because I think that often teenage love is kind of the best love there is. There's no money, there's no job, there's nothing else gets in the way. You know, if two young people fall in love or want to be with each other, it's because they just like that person. They like that person enough to want to spend time with them. Yeah? Whereas, you know, in adulthood and stuff, it becomes... there are loads of different contextual factors that kind of play into it, that, you know, are you going to buy a house together? Do you work near each other? Can you both do this, this and this? Do you know what I mean? So for Romeo and Juliet, they don't need anything else. They just want to be together because they love each other. Yeah? So she says, don't lead into a fool's paradise. And that stereotype of young people not knowing what love is, where I'd argue the opposite, to be honest. Now comes in the plan, and, you know, Romeo says, commend me to thy lady and mistress. You know, kind of tell her that I'm thinking of her, and kind of send a message for me. And the nurse is happy at this. Lord, she will be a joyful woman. Yeah? Now Romeo, again being impulsive, what wilt thou tell her, nurse? You know, what are you going to tell her about me? What are you going to say? Tell me what you're going to say. Yeah, he's being impulsive, he wants to know everything. Now comes the plan. Romeo, bid her devise some means to come to Shrift this afternoon, and there she shall at Friar Lawrence's cell be shrived and be married. Okay? So, Shrift is basically confession. So obviously we're in Italian, a city where Catholicism was a huge kind of, was the religion. And everyone would go to kind of confess their sins on a regular basis. So make up some idea of why she needs to come to Shrift, and then when we go to Friar Lawrence, she'll meet me there, and we will cleanse our sins and be married. Okay? Now then he tries to offer her money, here is for thy pains, and the nurse says, actually, no, don't worry, I don't want any money for this. I don't need it. That's not what I'm here for. Then comes the second part of the plan. Romeo says, good nurse, behind the abbey wall, bring thee cords made like a tackled stair. So bring like a rope ladder almost. I say almost, it literally is. So that he can be in the convoy in the secret night. Now, obviously, again, context. When people get married, marriage is one part of it, but then they need to consummate the marriage. Yeah? So they need to kind of, they have sex. So they kind of, under the eyes of God, that's when they're kind of fully, wholly kind of connected. And, you know, you might have heard of people getting annulments, you know, in history and stuff. And that's generally the idea of they got married, but they didn't consummate the marriage. So they can get divorced. And that was kind of the first step of allowing divorce in modern society. Now we see kind of the devotion that the nurse has to her. You know, she uses the superlative sweetest. You know, she is the sweetest lady. But then we get something which kind of only really happens in a play. But we get a kind of moment. And she is talking about how, oh, you know, I can't believe I tried to get her to marry Paris, and talk about he's a proper man. You know, you are such a lovely man. You know, she's going to be great with you. And then she says at the end, doth not Rosemary and Romeo begin with both the same letter? And we're kind of thinking, oh, what? Okay. Rosemary is kind of a way of remembering people who loved each other. So if two people die who were married their entire life, traditionally you would place rosemary on the grave or on the coffin, because that symbolizes the love between these two people. Okay. Now, an interesting bit of foreshadowing there, because we know star-crossed lovers take their life. We know Romeo and Juliet are going to die. And the fact that she says, does not Rosemary and Romeo both begin with a letter? They both begin with R, and rosemary is what is used to remember two dead lovers. And after that, they basically, he asks to commend me to thy lady again, and they go out. And that is it for today. So, got any questions? Do let me know. And in the meantime, stay safe, and I'll see you soon. Bye!
Action! Freilan's cell be shriveled. Excuse me. Shriveled. Yeah! Yeah! What was that?
What was it? How, now, cow.
How now, Frau Cow?
Boom, boom. Boom, declare. I like my lines, so it was very short.
They was.
They was, yeah.
Are we going from... No, next one.
Are we going from... Oh, the tissue sounds. As I hoot on a holler.
Nelly... Come on. To an L gold. I was going for Big Papa Pump, really. A pump. A pump.
No, when the single solo
A street of Romeo. Shut up. Sorry. The last one.
I didn't get my dressing room. I'd go.
Not Rosemary and Romeo begin with a letter. Anus. What of that? That's what you said. Anus. You're doing it again. You literally just went anus. Oh, that's my answer.
I can't do that. I'm not going to do it ever again. Anus.
A. For just hands.